Have you ever stopped to consider that perhaps the prison you're in wasn't built by anyone else but by you, not out of punishment but out of fear, out of habit, out of the constant and exhausting need to be seen a certain way? The truth is, many people live inside an invisible cell, one made not of stone or steel, but of silent compromises and suppressed instincts. A cell constructed over time, one decision after another, each brick laid with the thought, "What will they think of me?" Every time you swallowed your truth to avoid conflict, every time you laughed when you wanted to cry, nodded when you wanted to scream, or stayed still when you wanted to run, you added another brick. You might call it anxiety, you might call it stress, but underneath those labels, what you're really feeling is the weight of living a life that's not entirely yours. It's the suffocating heaviness of wearing a costume for so long, you've forgotten how your skin feels without it. And here's the cruel part. No one ever demanded you wear that mask. No one forced you to abandon your raw, vibrant, unapologetic self. You gave it up willingly. You handed over your truth in exchange for a fragile and temporary sense of acceptance, for a fleeting applause that fades even before you've taken your next breath. Somewhere along the way, you began to believe that in order to be loved, you needed to be liked, that in order to belong, you needed to obey. You became an expert in bending yourself into shapes that pleased others. But what happens to a soul when it's twisted so often it loses its original form? What remains when you peel away all the layers shaped by other people's opinions, fears, and standards? What's left that truly belongs to you? We live in a society that glorifies control. We're told that success lies in managing every detail, mastering every outcome, and never letting things slip through our fingers. From a young age, you were taught to organize, plan, and execute with precision. Keep everything neat, tight, predictable. If you could just control everything, then everything would be fine. No chaos, no failure, no shame. That's the fantasy, right? But here's a truth very few dare to admit. Control is an illusion. It's a beautifully constructed lie we cling to because the alternative, uncertainty, is terrifying. The more you try to manage every piece of your life, the more you find yourself drowning in anxiety, not peace. Control does not create calm. It breeds tension, hypervigilance, and an endless cycle of what-ifs. You spend so much time preparing for a future that may never happen, you forget to live the moment that is happening. And ironically, the more you tighten your grip, the more life slips between your fingers. You may have everything that should make you feel fulfilled: status, money, relationships, a sense of direction. And yet there's a whisper inside you, a soft but relentless sense that something's missing. That inner echo isn't wrong. It's your truth knocking. What you've built might look impressive, but if it's all constructed to meet other people's expectations, then it doesn't belong to you. It doesn't nourish you. It keeps you busy but not alive. That hollowness you feel is not because you're broken. It's because you've strayed too far from your own center, from your original essence, from the part of you that existed long before the world told you who to be. It's hard to hear that voice now, buried under layers of performance and perfection, but it's still there, waiting for you to remember. The 16th century philosopher Michel de Montaigne, isolated from the noise of society in his personal tower, reached a startling clarity. He realized what many still resist today. Our suffering often doesn't stem from external events, but from our compulsive need to control them, from our compulsive need to matter in the eyes of others, to always be safe from judgment, rejection, or failure. That need is what cages us. And yet, what if the very thing you fear, letting go, is the thing that could set you free? What if, by releasing that desperate grip on how things should be, you gave yourself the chance to discover who you really are? Imagine loosening that rope you've been clutching for dear life. The one you believe is holding you up but is actually pulling tighter around your neck with each passing day. What if freedom isn't about gaining more control, but about surrendering the need to control at all? It sounds paradoxical, but the more you try to maintain control over everything, the less control you actually have. The more you strive to be liked, the further you stray from authenticity. The more you avoid discomfort, the more power discomfort holds over you. Life was never meant to be sterile or symmetrical. It was never meant to be predictable or safe. Life is unpredictable, wild, full of contradictions and surprises, and that's where its beauty lies. That's where you lie. Accepting this truth is not an act of resignation. It is an act of profound courage. Letting go does not mean you don't care. It means you finally trust that you are enough, even when everything else is uncertain, that your worth isn't tied to applause or approval, that your identity doesn't need to be curated, defended, or explained. Imagine who you'd be if you weren't so afraid of being judged. What kind of life would you lead if you didn't spend so much energy keeping up appearances? That version of you, the one living in your imagination right now, untethered and unafraid, is more real than the one playing a part each day. But there's a reason you haven't embraced that version, and it's not laziness or cowardice. It's fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of emptiness. Because deep down, you suspect that if you let go of everything you've been holding on to, every role, every title, every opinion, you might not recognize yourself anymore. You might not know who's left behind. And maybe you're right. Maybe letting go would burn away all the false layers you've wrapped around yourself for years. Maybe you'd feel naked, vulnerable, exposed. But maybe, for the first time, you'd also feel true. That raw, honest version of you, the one that emerges from silence and stillness, is not something to fear. It is something to cherish, something to remember. Because it is the only version of you that can ever truly be free. The freedom you seek isn't hidden in a book or locked away in someone else's wisdom. It's here, right now. Available the moment you stop running, stop pretending, and start listening to what your soul has been trying to say for years. You don't need more validation. You don't need more control. You don't need more time. You just need to stop playing a character in a story you didn't choose and start writing your own. It's a terrifying shift, but it's also the only one that can lead you to peace. Are you willing to make that shift? Are you ready to release the mask, the script, and the stage, and meet yourself truly without all the props? Or will you keep holding on, hoping that someday someone will come along and give you permission to be who you are? Because no one's coming, and no one needs to. You've always had that permission. You've just been too afraid to grant it to yourself. The truth is, every day you remain where you are, controlled, cautious, contained, you drift further away from your essence. And if you wait too long, you may forget how to find your way back. The journey toward freedom isn't easy. It isn't neat, but it is necessary. You don't have to know exactly who you are before you begin. You just need to be brave enough to let go of who you are not. This is not about rejecting everything you've built. It's about reevaluating which parts truly belong to you and which ones were built from fear. It's about taking back ownership of your life and choosing to live not as a reflection of other people's opinions, but as an expression of your truth. You might lose a few things in the process: comfort, predictability, approval. But what you gain is worth infinitely more. You gain yourself. You can stay in the safety of the known, of course. You can live in the comfort of repetition. You can continue polishing the mask, hoping it becomes your face. But that safety is not free. It costs your aliveness. It costs your joy. It costs the possibility of becoming who you were always meant to be. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to feel your feet on your own path, to speak words that taste like your own truth, to look in the mirror and see someone you recognize, not someone who's been tailored to fit the moment. The world may not always applaud authenticity, but your soul will. Every time you choose truth over comfort, you come home to yourself. Every time you let go of control, you create space for life to surprise you. So here you are, at a crossroads. You can continue to hold on, or you can choose something different, something uncertain, unpredictable, but honest, something that finally feels like you. We are taught from a very young age to chase certain things, to follow maps drawn by others, to pursue goals not because we truly desire them, but because somewhere along the way we were told that these are the things that matter. That success looks like a title, a diploma, a certain income, a specific kind of lifestyle. So we climb, we struggle, we push ourselves toward that image, rarely stopping to ask, do I even want this? And once you reach the top of the ladder, the career, the dream that wasn't yours, you look around and realize that the view is not what you imagined. It's not awe-inspiring, it's confusing. You feel a strange kind of emptiness because what you see isn't your dream at all. It's a reflection of someone else's version of success, and you've just spent years chasing it. You realize that in your rush to get somewhere, you never paused to ask if it was where you truly wanted to go. There is something profoundly disorienting about achieving what you thought would fulfill you, only to discover that it doesn't. That discomfort, that unsettling feeling deep in your gut, is your inner voice finally making itself heard. The voice you silenced for so long because it didn't fit the script. The voice that's been whispering that there's more to life than applause, more to joy than approval, and more to success than recognition. Mitchell de Montaigne, in his Solitude centuries ago, uncovered a dangerous truth. That genuine success has little to do with how you appear and everything to do with how aligned you are with your essence. True success is not about reaching outward but returning inward. It is not about building an identity that dazzles others, but about uncovering the one that feels whole in silence. But this kind of success demands something most people are too afraid to give: honesty. Brutal, sometimes painful honesty with yourself. You see, you've been performing for so long that it feels natural. You've worn so many masks that your own face has become unfamiliar. Every day, you wake up and step into a role. The friend, the employee, the partner, the achiever. You adapt and conform so well that you don't even realize you're acting. But there's a toll. There's always a toll. The weight of inauthenticity accumulates slowly. The stress you feel, the anxiety that seems to come out of nowhere, the restlessness that follows you despite your achievements, they are symptoms of that inner disconnect. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just out of sync with yourself. And here lies a profound irony. The more effort you put into becoming what others expect, the further you drift from your own truth. Eventually, it's not just your image that's shaped by others. It's your thoughts, your words, your desires. You can't even tell if what you want is actually yours. You become a collage of everyone else's preferences, stitched together into something presentable but not alive. This is why freedom is so frightening. Because to be truly free, you must risk being seen. Fully, honestly, without the armor of performance. You must be willing to disappoint people, to confuse them, to be misunderstood. You must be willing to lose the comfort of approval in exchange for the clarity of authenticity. And this is why most people never make that leap. They prefer to remain comfortably numb. They settle for a life of safety over a life of meaning. They accept partial happiness, filtered joy, and muted purpose because the alternative, true self-discovery, is too uncertain, too demanding, too real. Routine becomes the perfect hiding place. It offers predictability, the illusion of stability. It numbs you just enough to forget the questions you don't want to answer. And slowly, your days begin to blur together. You live technically. You go through the motions. You smile in photos, show up to meetings, reply to texts, but inside you feel like something's missing. Not something external, something essential. That something is your freedom. The raw, unfiltered expression of who you really are. And freedom is not about doing whatever you want whenever you want. That's just rebellion in disguise. True freedom is much more radical. It's having the courage to choose your truth again and again, even when it costs you something, even when it isolates you, even when it means being seen not as perfect but as human. You may be thinking, but if I show my real self, I might lose everything. And maybe you will. But then ask yourself, if you have to hide who you are to keep something, was it ever really yours? If a relationship only survives your silence, if your job only values your mask, if your life only functions when you're pretending, then you don't own any of it. It owns you. Authenticity is not comfortable. It burns. It strips away illusions, but in its fire you discover something extraordinary. What remains is real. The relationships that endure, the work that excites you, the life that reflects you, Those things flourish in the presence of truth. The rest was clutter. The rest was noise. You have far less to lose than you fear and far more to gain than you imagine. But you won't know that until you leap, until you stop managing your life like a project and start living it like a poem. It all comes back to detachment, not from love, not from people, but from illusion. Montaigne understood that detachment isn't about abandonment, it's about clarity. It's the understanding that nothing can truly belong to you if your identity is dependent on it. That only when you stop clutching with desperation can your hands be open enough to receive something real. Most people live in fear of loss because they've never dared to see what remains when the performance ends. They cling to jobs, to relationships, to societal roles because without them, they're not sure who they are. But what if loss isn't the end? What if it's the beginning of everything you've been seeking? Let go of the narratives that don't reflect you. Let go of inherited fears, borrowed dreams, and the scripts written by others. Real life begins when you stop acting, when you stop trying to become something and begin remembering who you already are. That remembering is not loud, it's quiet. Often it happens in the stillness between choices, in the moments you stop performing long enough to hear your inner voice whisper, "This is not me," and then a new story begins. Because storytelling is not just a way to communicate, it's how we construct our identities. We are all, consciously or not, the narrators of our lives. We craft versions of ourselves with every sentence we repeat, every belief we hold, every role we reinforce. We tell ourselves stories about who we are and who we're not, about what we deserve, what we can achieve, and what we must endure. But what if those stories are outdated? What if they were never true to begin with? What if they were handed down to you from parents, teachers, media, or society, and you accepted them because you didn't know you had a choice? Rewriting your story doesn't mean denying your past. It means reclaiming the pen. It means stepping out of victimhood and into authorship. It means refusing to let old narratives define your future. Because your past may explain you, but it doesn't define you. You are not the sum of your traumas or failures. You are the potential of what you choose to become. And the stories we tell ourselves don't just shape how we see the world, they shape how the world sees us. Every belief you carry becomes a filter. Every internal narrative becomes a silent script that others subconsciously follow. If you believe you are unworthy, you may find yourself in relationships that reflect that. If you tell yourself you'll never succeed, you may sabotage opportunities that could prove you wrong. That's the quiet power of narrative. It doesn't scream, but it shapes reality. And so, building your story consciously isn't self-indulgence. It's survival, it's creation, it's revolution, and it's ongoing. Because you're not a finished book, you're a living, evolving manuscript. Every moment, every decision, every mistake, and every miracle adds a new paragraph. What seemed like an ending yesterday may reveal itself as a beginning tomorrow. What felt like a failure may later be recognized as the turning point. And perhaps this is the most beautiful thing. You never stop writing. Even when you feel lost, even when nothing makes sense, even when the page seems blank, you are still creating, still shaping, still becoming. There is no final version of you. There is only the ever-deepening story. So don't fear contradiction. Don't be ashamed of complexity. The most authentic stories are not the ones that are perfectly polished. They are the ones that are honest, vulnerable, messy, and alive. Real stories contain doubt, confusion, growth, setbacks, and epiphanies, just like real people. And maybe, just maybe, the point isn't to figure it all out. Maybe the point is simply to keep writing, to stay curious, to allow yourself the freedom to be rewritten by your experiences, your choices, your awakenings. You don't need to know how the story ends. You only need to keep showing up for it. So, what will you write next? Will you continue to replay the same lines, stuck in a role you didn't choose, performing for an audience that isn't even watching anymore? Or will you start to listen, really listen, to the quiet parts of yourself that still remember what it feels like to be free? The page is blank again, and this time the pen is in your hands.